All right. Well, Boker Tov, everyone. Moda ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam, shechazarta bi nishmati b'chemla, rava emunatecha. I give thanks to you, life and sustaining ruler, that you have returned my soul to me with compassion. Great is your confidence in me. So we are going to learn more of our Birkat Hamazon. So let's say our bracha together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, God, ruler of the universe, who uh, makes us holy with commandments and commands us to engage in Torah study. So we've been looking at this. I'm going to do a quick review because some of us are not regular per se, so I want to make sure that everyone gets what this is. As the title says, Rub-a-dub-dub, thanks for the grub, yay God. That's our shorthand way of saying Birkat Hamazon. And I'm sorry, I'm using the version that I'm constantly editing rather than my PDF. So we have all that red stuff underneath words that are Hebrew in transliteration. But we discussed that Birkat Hamazon begins on Shabbat with a special psalm, which has these words, Hazorim Bedima Barina Yiktsoru, those who sow in tears shall reap in joy. This came up in our other class as an example of a chiastic order, meaning it goes ABBA, Hazorim Bedima Barina Yiktsoru, OEEO. And you see that in the psalmic tradition, that poetry appears. People often think, oh, the text is just so totally, the language is such a totally different language, but the same methods of poetry are found in all languages. So after that introduction, we have the Zimun, or the welcome to pray, and we talked about that. Not enough time to go over that now. Then we talked about how there are 4 paragraphs of the main prayer called the Birkat Hamazon, which you can read all about in the Talmud in Brachot 48b. The first one attributed to Moses, the second one to Joshua, the third one to David and Solomon, and then the fourth one down here for goodness is attributed to the sages. There are inserts, and I think we skipped the inserts. I don't know that we really went into the detail about these. Maybe we talked about Shabbat. I can't remember now. I'll have to go back. But we definitely did not talk about the Rosh Chodesh and holiday insert. But there is an insert there for various holidays as well. Interestingly, I'm realizing it's just the festivals and Rosh Chodesh. It does not have Rosh Hashanah in there, which is interesting. Obviously, you wouldn't have Yom Kippur in a Birkat Hamazon because that's a fast day. Okay, and then we discussed that after that are a series of special prayers, what we call Harachaman prayers, prayers that are may the merciful one, this and that. We discussed a whole bunch of them. We discussed also that this is a far more fluid part of the prayer, that prayer books might have a lot of these and some new ones. It might have most of these, but not certain things, these kinds of things. So anyway, so that's the case with those. And then we discussed how in modern times we have editions that are reflecting our modern views, like this special edition that focuses on the matriarchs, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. We talked about sort of the ingenious way that the prayer is constructed. And all of this is in previous episodes of this class, which are loaded onto my YouTube page. So we are archiving these if you ever want to go back. And then we discussed, I guess that's how far we got. We got to this point. And then I opened it up to new prayers here. Actually, we did do these. We noted that these are very modern, such as this first one that talks, it's so poignant now with people who are held hostage, prayers for those members of the Jewish people who are being held hostage or kidnapped. It's not specific to this era. It's always been a part of the tradition. And now it just feels all the more so significant to us as we deal with the effects of there still being hostages in tunnels underground in Gaza. We talked about how there's a prayer for Israel that it be uh, a beginning of the flowering of redemption, meaning that the birth of Israel can be seen by and has been seen by many as the beginning signs of the birth pangs, you could say, of the Messiah coming and basically saving us all. Um, and so this prayer says, Harachaman, may the merciful one bless the state of Israel, beginning of the flowering of our redemption. And then lastly, this one also has been added in more recent years. I don't remember when it first appears out there. That would be an interesting study and who did it. That says, may there be brotherhood or sisterhood or kinship between the children of Sarah and the children of Hagar. We know that both Sarah and Hagar were married, or in this traditional understanding, in a relationship with Abraham, who in Islam is Ibrahim. So our traditions about Abraham are through a Jewish lens, but Muslims are no less connected to Abraham. In fact, this is one of the reasons why people call Judaism, Christianity, and Islam Abrahamic religions, because they all derive from Abraham Avinu, Abraham our father. And so we're praying here for a peaceful relationship between Jews and Muslims, between Arabs and Jews, between Israelis and Palestinians. It's an ongoing prayer. And yeah, certainly traditional prayer books may not have this in there, but the spirit of it is part of even traditional traditional Jewish approaches. So I think we need to remember that, especially when we're in a state of war and people really, draw their battle lines and dehumanize their enemies. But Muslims and Jews have a long history of relationship. And it's indicative of that in our prayer book. Okay. Any questions up to this point? That's all by way of review, which is a lot. Anybody have things they want to ask or additions? Okay. Okay. Let's look where we go from there. This section that's you'll notice that instead of a solid line, it's in a perforated line, talks about additional Harachaman prayers, or may the merciful one prayers, that are related to 3 holidays or 3 times. One is Shabbat, one is Rosh Chodesh, which of course is the new moon, and one is for the holidays. And then there's a special one on Sukkot as well that's added. So let's take a look at these. Harachaman hu yanchilenu yom shekulo Shabbat u'menucha l'chayei ha'olamim. May the merciful one bestow upon us or grant us a day in which all is Shabbat. Everything is Shabbat. So that is an echo of the notion that Shabbat is a taste of the world to come. Me'en olam haba. It's a me'en. It's a sort of a component of, I don't know how to translate that, but Me'en Olam Haba is sort of the sense that we're getting a taste of it. There's a little bit of Olam Haba, world to come. Shabbat is a paradise that we create on earth and is a reminder of what the world is supposed to be like. A day in which we rest, a day in which we celebrate, a day in which we reflect on how beautiful our creation is. So may there be a day when all days are like that. And that there be rest and that it be eternal. Pretty straightforward. Okay, now let's look at Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh, which is the new moon, it says, Harachaman v'yichadesh aleinu et hachodesh hazeh l'tova v'livracha. It's kind of straightforward. May the merciful one renew upon us this month for goodness and blessing. So when Shabbat, or I'm sorry, when one is eating on Rosh Chodesh, so once a month, or it's actually, there's times when it's twice a month, but that's a different conversation. We have a tradition of adding this sentence. So even if it's not Shabbat, but it is Rosh Chodesh, you would do this line that's in orange. And then also on a holiday, on a festival day. And what are the festivals? It's Shabbat, it's Pesach, Purim, and Shavuot, the three pilgrimage festivals, and probably also Rosh Hashanah, although it's not stated the way I've done this here. You say, Harachaman huyanchilenu yom shekulo tov. May the merciful one grant us a day in which all is good. Clearly, there's an echo of Yom Shekulo Shabbat. Right, here's Yom Shekulo, Shabbat. And then here is Yom Shekulo Tov, a day in which all is Shabbat. Now, I made this font bigger than this one because Shabbat is 52 times a year, roughly. And this one is 12 times a year. And this is about 5 times a year. So, 52 out of 365 days, we say this one. 12 out of 365 days, really about 15, because there are months where there's 2 days of Rosh Chodesh, 15 or 16. I have to go back. My son would tell us immediately because he knows these things. You would say that line, and then just a handful of times. And then the most rare of these is just 7 days on Sukkot. And this one is my favorite. Harachaman hu yakim lanu et Sukkot David hanofelet or hanofalet. May the merciful one erect for us the sukkah of David which has fallen. What on earth are they talking about? Does anybody have an idea? What is the sukkah of David that has fallen? Irvin, you want to, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Possibly, I'm just kind of guessing here. The House of David, maybe.
Yeah, what is the house of David?
Well, the House of David it's in Israel right now. You can go there and see it. I mean,
it's the Beit HaMikdash. It's the temple.
Oh, okay. There we go.
So, David, the irony, of course, is that David didn't actually build it. You'll remember the story that David got in trouble, sort of like Moses got in trouble. Moses, struck the rock when he wasn't supposed to and was not allowed to enter the promised land. David did what he did to Uriah the Hittite, who was the husband of Bathsheba, who he lusted after, and was able to kill off her husband, and then he married her. And the rabbis say, that's not okay. And the prophets say, that's not okay. And as a result, I think the prophet is Baruch. He's not allowed to build. It says in the text that he had too much blood on his hands, So they did not allow him to build the temple. And King Solomon, his son, builds the temple itself, the first temple. But it's still called the Sukkah of David, the dwelling place of David, Hanophalet, which has fallen. In other words, that has been destroyed. The temple was destroyed. So this line from Sukkot has this vision of a different kind of a sukkah, namely the temple, not a sukkah like in your backyard, especially Brad when he builds one for the school, um, but it is the temple itself, the Beit Hamikdash. So we're asking God that we restore that. Now, there's a melody that I love that I only get to sing those 7 or 8 days of Sukkot. Harachaman hu yakim lanu et sukkot David hanofalet. 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 That is a Carl Bach melody, and it's a beautiful one. And we get to sing it once a year, or one time, one season of the year, one 7 day holiday, which ends up being 8 days because of the way we do things. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, and then there's this one, which gets a lot of attention. Harachaman hu yizakenu limot hamashiach u'chayei ha'olam haba. Harachaman hu yizakenu limot hamashiach u'chayei ha'olam haba. Oh, may the merciful one merit us the days of the Messiah and the and life of the world to come. So there's this yearning, again, the pangs for the Messiah, which you see elsewhere too, like the line about the sukkah being rebuilt. That's actually a messianic view. You have to get all the Christian understanding of Messiah out of your head and understand what Jews are trying to say. For the most part, what we're just saying is rebuild Jerusalem with a new king. Like that's the theology. Whether we actually look at it that way, I mean, it gets complicated. There's also views of there being a supernatural kind of messianic era. But regardless of how you see it, there is this yearning for the messianic era to come, that there be a solution to all the problems of the world, and we can have a utopian society all around us. Uh, what is the French Revolutionary Rally? Is it da 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 da? So sometimes people will sing Harachaman hu yizakenu limod Mashiach. I think that's how they do it. I haven't heard it in a long time, but anyway. Any questions or comments on that? Okay.
Do you do you find that the different denominations or different, I guess, I say denominations lightly, but like Reform Judaism or, Hasidic, do you find that there's more or less emphasis on kind of messianic
Oh,
times?
yeah. Absolutely. Uh, Reform Judaism basically says no. We actually, for the most part, say no to the Messiah. I mean, I'm overstating it, but not really. If you look at the Reform Prayer Book, the Messiah is barely a concept, and usually it's a concept associated with sort of the folk traditions of someone like Elijah coming and being there with the poorest of the poor. Um, Reform Judaism was actually built upon an architecture of rejection of messianism. Think about, if we move away from traditional theology and ask global international relationships questions, international relations questions, we have to come to terms with what we're saying if we're praying for the Messiah to come. We're saying that we would like the temple to be rebuilt. What would that do if we actually did rebuild that temple? What we would have to do is blow up or destroy the third most holy site in Islam, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, as well as the Dome of the Rock. These are very, very important places for over 1 billion people in the world. And we're going to just destroy them and rebuild the temple. So long ago, in the 1800s, I would say one of the first things to go from Reform theology was a focus on a literal Messiah. What ends up happening is Reform Jews, maybe I'll go off camera here. I mean, I'll take us off this screen so we can see each other better. Reform Judaism basically says, no, we actually don't understand it as a literal Messiah. We're going to talk about a messianic era. In the prayer book, when we say the Avot prayer, instead of saying Umevi Goel Livnei V'neihem, and may God, and God is bringing uh, a redeemer, Livnei V'neihem, for the children of their children, right? I'm scrambling it a little bit, but the whole point is we said instead of the traditional word goel, which means redeemer, we say geula, which means redemption. In other words, we spiritualize this notion of a new era as something that we can build together, that we can create heaven on earth. And if you were to ever ask, you know, the Jews of Europe who were the early reformers. And by the way, when we say reform Judaism, we don't say reformed. This is like one of these basic mistakes that a lot of people make. I think people understand that we don't say reformed because reformed is like the Christians have the Reformed Church, but reform, as Jews understand it, is an ongoing interaction with the world. We are constantly reforming, we are rebuilding, we are redefining for modern times our Jewishness. Reformed says, okay, it just happened. We made a whole bunch of liturgical changes and we're done. Reformed Judaism, if you look, I mean, I happen to be in my office. So if you compare the Union Prayer Book, this little thing, which was used at Temple Bethel for years, to where is my Gates of Prayer? Well, I guess I don't know where my Gates of Prayer is. It's that blue book that was here for 40 years. And now we've got, and I'll pull out the full version, the Mishkan Tefillah. You know, you just look at how different this is. Okay, this one there's some Hebrew. There's definitely Hebrew in here, but it's like almost you can barely see it. It's a cut and paste. This one is filled with a lot more Hebrew, and it's a return to the tradition, which is just an example of the way in which things have changed and
So,
continuing to change.
so would you say kind of the messianic view, or the messianic era has been replaced, or maybe I guess replaced is too strong of a word. Has it been, but I guess that's the best thing I can think of. Has
Yeah.
the emphasis been more on Tikkun Olam than the Messianic era for Reform Judaism? Has it morphed into, okay, there's going to be a king and kind of, rebuilding the temple versus, I guess, does that make sense? As more,
Yes. Yeah. We're not trying to establish a new king. In fact, look at the attitude that a lot of reform, I don't want to get too political here, but if you look at the way the reform movement in Israel understands Benjamin Netanyahu, The last thing they want is a king. You know, the last thing they want is a king. What they want is a Jewish state that is a symbol, what Achad Ha'am, well, actually not Achad Ha'am. I mean, in a way, Achad Ha'am, but in the book of Isaiah, there's this idea that Jews will be an or legoyim, a light unto the nations. So, what does it mean to bring about the Messianic era? It means for us to do all that we can to make this world a better place. You know, I just saw that Jerry Nadler is finally, after 30 some odd years, retiring from the Congress. This is kind of a big deal. Nadler, solidly Jewish. His investment in Congress has been an embodiment of his Jewish values. And he did it, you know, he's one of, in my mind, one of the greats. I'm sure there are plenty of Republicans who would disagree with me on that, but that's okay. He really dutifully showed that he was a dutiful reform Jew, I should say. You know, I don't know if he was literally reformed, but this idea that the texts are there to make the world a better place, what you call tikkun olam, which is a category, a concept, it's definitely built on that architecture that I just described. So Reform Judaism is active engagement in the world to make this world a better place built upon Jewish values. There is no doubt that that is what we've seen as our call to purpose. In the 90s, as Reform Judaism was rediscovering some of the traditions, within the rabbinical world, there was a bit of a rebellion. There were people who were having a hard time with it because what do you mean our focus is on spirituality? We're here to be part of the larger world, to engage in it and not to withdraw, is what they might say. So I think we've gotten through that. Now we're at a stage in which we're back to believing in building heaven on earth, right? That's what we're trying to do, heaven on earth. And that's what Messiah is about. So I have no problem saying the line that says, Hu yizakenu limot hamashiach. In fact, the text says limot hamashiach. It says the messianic era, right? So if you think about it, once you have a king, then there's an era that goes with that king. And if that era is one of justice and compassion and kindness, then we win. I think Reform Judaism would just emphasize the idea of redemption and era, redemptive era, rather than redeemer, literally someone, a descendant of King David, which is what the messianic notion is. I think I probably said far more than you needed to hear, but any other questions on that? We're actually at a good breaking point anyway for this class because the next thing is a kind of a new concept. So any last questions or comments? Hi, Etzel, by the way. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming. And we'll be learning again next week.
And have a good week.
A week of peace.
Exactly.
And if you didn't make Havdalah yet, today is the last day. Tuesdays, you're still allowed to make Havdalah.
Well, have a good day.
Thank you. If you swing by, we can do it in my office right now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.